Why is it that there's been no charges brought against any individuals involved in this video clip that everybody by now has doubtless seen? This is the question on everybody's mind. There's been a lot of confusion and concern as to why that is, and also about why it is that the IOPC, the Independent Office for Police Conduct, has requested CCTV footage from journalists and demanded or requested to know who it was that leaked that CCTV footage, even though, of course, journalists are just not going to give up their sources. They will even risk going to prison to refuse to give up their sources. However, there's also been questions raised as to what it is that the IOPC is, in fact, investigating. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about that in this video. And the IOPC is to investigate the police, essentially the police conduct. That is what they are there to do. But just as a clarification that not everybody may realize with respect is the IOPC does have the powers of arrest, and they have the power to detain and investigate evidence and so on. But they only look at police. They don't look at individuals, which is something that will be something of an explanation in this video. However, that said, they did release this fact sheet, which you might find quite interesting. And not everybody might have read it, which is why I'm doing this video here. Now, just at the outset, I have to say that these are all live proceedings, so I am somewhat limited in what I can say, because there's a live investigation into the police officers, both for professional conduct and potential criminal responsibility. And indeed, I understand that Greater Manchester Police have prepared this file for the CPS to consider against the individuals showed in the video. So for all those reasons, what I comment on here is generic and explanatory, and of course based on what has been publicly shared by the IOPC or by Greater Manchester Police, and thus not intended to sway any of the proceedings in any way whatsoever. I have to make that caveat. Right, so let's go into this fact sheet here. It says, the Independent Office for Police Conduct has produced this fact sheet to help you understand the work that has been undertaken following the incident at Manchester Airport on the 23rd of July. And to help you answer questions you may receive from your communities and networks. That's something I will comment on in a minute, because that's not really going to sway the investigations anyway whatsoever. It says it's important to us that the local community know what work we've been doing and how we can help you further. However, because this is a criminal investigation, we are limited, even they say, in what we can say because of the risks of prejudicing any potential criminal trial or disciplinary proceedings. Thus, my caveat in this video. We've tried to include as many questions and provide the answers as possible, which is something I'll comment on in a minute, because I might informally invite them to add one or two questions. We'll see how we go. If you feel we've missed anything, please do contact us on this address. So if you feel that they've missed any questions out, based on my general commentary in this video, you might want to email them politely, please, to say that you want an answer to this question, and they might well publish it. You'd be surprised. They'll actually respond, and they'll probably be helpful. I'm sure they'll be helpful. The police complaints landscape, like most processes governed by legislation, it's complex and has many stages, can be difficult to understand. We're trying to make this information more accessible and sharing it in a way that might help those working within and alongside the complaints system. And of course, you, my viewers, because this is a public document. So investigation. Why is the IOPC involved? As you all know, a video of a Greater Manchester Police officer appearing to kick and stamp on a man at Terminal 2 of Manchester Airport circulated on social media on the 24th of July. It attracted widespread concern and was picked up by media outlets across the country. Of course, there were the subsequent videos that showed more of what happened, but we'll come back to that in a minute, maybe. We contacted GMP to inquire whether they were aware of the video and to ask if they would be referring the matter to us. We subsequently received 2 conduct referrals from them relating to the use of force during the arrest of 4 people during the incident, and began an investigation on the 25th of July. We're in the process of documenting a number of complaints from people involved. We'll be asking the police to record and refer those complaints to us to include them in as part of the investigation. Our investigation is entirely separate from the police investigations into the actions of members of the public relating to the incident. I'll repeat that for emphasis and clarity, because that will answer a question which, ironically, they missed out, which I'll come back to in a minute. But this is an important question that I think everybody wants answered. Our investigation is entirely separate, they say, from Greater Manchester Police investigations into the actions of the members of the public relating to the incident. Of course, the IOPC is investigating the police, not members of the public, for clarity. Now, allow me a moment to talk to you about something that I very strongly recommend you do to protect yourselves from frauds and scams. You'll know on this channel for many years now, actually, I've been helping you to understand law and protecting you from scams and fraud one video at a time. And for that reason, I partnered with a company called Incogni, which will help to protect you from scams and frauds. You see, we've had several clients come to us over the years at the law firm who've been victims of scams and fraud. They've had loans taken out in their name. They've had mobile phone contracts or other contracts taken out in their name, and all sorts of other fraudulent use of their personal data. You see, your personal data will be gathered together by companies with whom you share that information. They gather it together, they package you up as a product, and they sell it on. You'd have heard the phrase, "We may share your details with relevant third parties." Well, sometimes they sell that data on. And then data brokers pull all of these together as a package and they resell it, and it gets sold over and over again. Then you get a data leak, and there's millions or even billions of records of data that are leaked or stolen. And eventually they end up in the wrong hands. And of course, that means that when the fraudsters want to target you, they might find your information or buy it from one of these data brokers because they've got hold of this information. But that's where Incogni comes in. It is a very straightforward service where you instruct them to go through and contact all of these data brokers to remove your data from their databases, both in the UK and in the USA. And it will save you countless hours as well. In fact, just this morning, I had another update to show me that there's been 140 requests to remove my data on my behalf. 114 of those have been completed. There are still 26 in progress. And if I'd have submitted all of these requests myself, it would have taken me over 85 hours. But all I did was a very straightforward process of signing up with Incogni, and they did all of the work for me. Of course, I get you a fantastic discount as a partner to my channel. It is 60% off with a 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is on screen. The link's in the description below. Check it out, and please do take this few minutes to protect your personal data and prevent yourselves from being scammed and defrauded like so many of our clients. Steps taken in the investigation to date. We've obtained body-worn, and now this is really interesting for you to hear about here. We've obtained body-worn video footage from officers in attendance and reviewed a substantial amount of CCTV footage from inside and outside the airport terminal. We are also reviewing footage shared by the public via our dedicated reporting line as well as on social media. We've met with members of the family who were involved during the incident to explain our role, gather information. We met with members of the local community to better understand the concerns and share what information we can about the investigation so far, hence the production of this document. We are carrying out a criminal investigation into allegations of assault and also looking at potential gross misconduct in relation to a number of alleged breaches of police standards of professional behaviour. That should be clarified here that that's against the police, not about the individuals concerned within the footage. This does not necessarily mean criminal charges or disciplinary proceedings will follow. At the end of the investigation, we'll decide whether to refer the matter to the Crown Prosecution Service for charging decision and whether to recommend disciplinary proceedings. We've issued a number of public statements which are on the website. We anticipate further public updates, and one of them, I don't think it was so much an update as reported in the news that they were seeking the who leaked the CCTV footage, but I've covered that in a separate video. Again, with no intention of scuppering the proceedings, just reporting on it, because I don't think, as an independent view, I don't think in any scenario reporters should be even asked to provide who their leaks are, unless it's an absolute matter of national security, and that's a completely separate conversation. What will our investigation be looking at? This was a complex and fast-moving incident, and there's a number of lines of inquiry to follow. Our independent investigation will consider the actions of police from their arrival at Terminal 2 up to the arrest of individuals being taken into custody, including the use of force against 3 members of the public, 2 men and a woman, who were part of the initial incident near the car park pay machines, during which 2 men were arrested. The force used by officers in relation to 3 other members of the public during an incident shortly afterwards, during which a lot of people may not know about, during which 2 men were arrested and one of the individuals was pepper sprayed. What indications or evidence there is that officers' treatment of those 6 individuals may have been influenced by protected characteristics, such as race, religion, or belief. Whether the response actions and decisions made by the police officers were in line with local and national policing policies and procedures. Then there's a diagram here you can pause to read or consider if you wish. This is the general process and stages of investigation, what they investigate, questions from family, etc., etc. You can read that in your own time. Here's a really interesting bit, because there are, I think, obviously, I'm safe to say, lots of questions by lots of people around the country, if not around the world, about this incident. And some questions are addressed here, but you may feel that some questions were missed off. I feel that some questions may be missed off, and they may be helpful to the public. So I would indirectly and informally invite them to address those questions, perhaps. But here we go. Question 1. Why was this incident not immediately referred to the IOPC? I think it was relatively quick, but it says police forces must assess any adverse incident or conduct matter against the IOPC referral criteria to determine whether they're required to refer the matter to the IOPC. In use of force allegations, they must refer any allegation of assault in which the level of injury reaches a level of actual bodily harm, etc. In this case, GMP did not consider the level of injury met the threshold, but decided to make a voluntary referral when it became clear that there was a high level of public concern regarding the incident. So they would not have otherwise referred it because it didn't meet the threshold, but they did so because there was a greater public concern about the video. Why didn't the IOPC publish the full video of the incident? It says, well, although they'll gather all video footage relating to the incident, it doesn't own the footage. It will not routinely publish footage of an incident during an ongoing criminal conduct or death or serious injury investigation to protect the integrity of the investigation. Usually, footage will only be considered for release by the IOPC either during or following any criminal misconduct proceedings which may follow. How did further footage end up in the social media when this was subject to a criminal investigation? Well, they say the IOPC was not authorised the sharing of any footage gathered during the course of the investigation. They say we were not aware that footage of the incident had been obtained by media outlets until we saw that it had been published. We don't know how the media outlet obtained the footage of this incident and why they chose to publish it. I can answer that very generally speaking in my personal view. Again, not to derail any investigations, but very generally it's been said fairly widely that this was a public interest matter and everybody wanted to see what happened. And so naturally, people want to see both sides, and the media want to cover it impartially from both sides. If it was for or against the police, doubtless media outlets would publish said material. They will take, as I read that they did, they would take a decision whether to publish the material, whether to obscure the faces and therefore identity of the individuals and so on. They take that choice to do so. And that they did. And so that's what they did. They took that decision to publish it. But that's obviously a matter for the independent news outlets and not the IOPC, as they confirm here. But they say, they go on, but the media do not have to disclose their sources. Repeat for emphasis, the media do not have to disclose their sources. Although later, I think it's post-dated this fact sheet, they did ask for who the source was. I understand because they were concerned whether it might have been from within the police force without good policing reason to release the footage to the media. At least that's what I've read online. We know the first media outlet to publish the footage was the local news outlet in Manchester Evening News. Should there be an indication that someone serving with the police provided footage to the media when not authorised to do so, we would expect this to be referred to us. There's no indication that anyone from the IOPC provided the footage to the media. If there were an indication that they did, and they weren't authorised to do so, this will be dealt with as a disciplinary matter. A couple of other questions. One said, why haven't you arrested the officer who appears to kick and stamp the man's head? And in an independent criminal investigation, they have the same power as police officers, but like police officers, they can only be used in certain circumstances where it's necessary to search and seize and so on. And if they don't have those circumstances, they can arrange to interview under criminal caution, but an arrest is not necessary for the investigation to take place. How is the IOPC criminal investigation different to a police investigation, i.e. where a member of the public is suspected of violence? This is the closest it comes to answering a question which I feel is probably not really answered within this fact sheet. They say the police are given powers that members of the public do not have. For example, to use force to arrest someone or to prevent immediate harm, like a threat to life. Now, this bit I don't entirely agree with respect, but it says the police are given powers that members of the public do not have. Strictly true, the police do have more authority than members of the public, but it says here, for example, to use force to arrest someone or to prevent immediate harm, like a threat to life. I think that's somewhat misleading. There are several bits of law that cover this, notably Section 3 of the Criminal Law Act 1967, which applies to persons, not just police officers. Section 3 is the use of force in making an arrest, etc. It says a person may use such force as is reasonable in the circumstances, in the prevention of crime, or in effecting or assisting in the lawful arrest of offenders, or suspected offenders, or of persons unlawfully at large. So this applies generally to citizens, not just police officers. But as I say, nonetheless, members of the public can, in those circumstances, use what is deemed to be reasonable force. So back to the document. It is true that police are given more powers than members of the public, but it would be wrong to say that members of the public cannot use any level of force. So just so that that's clear. But then it goes on, the police, must justify any use of force as is reasonable, proportionate, necessary in the circumstances, and in line with police professional standards. A criminal investigation is not automatic at the point where the police officer uses force on someone. The decision to criminally investigate is based on an assessment of the evidence and a decision whether there's an indication of a criminal offence may be committed. For example, if it was an unlawful arrest and the police used excessive force, obviously that might amount to an assault. Generally speaking, you understand, and then the police might be investigated criminally and maybe even charged and prosecuted like anybody else. As it goes on to say, where there's an indication that a criminal offence has been committed or that police standards or professional behaviour have been breached, by law, those investigating must notify the officers that they've been investigating disciplinary matters and notify officers of potential criminal offences under the investigation. And then again, decide whether to refer it to the CPS. One or two questions about race or religious discrimination. First of all, is discrimination being considered? The answer was yes. It's included within the investigation, but it doesn't mean that it was a factor, but it will be considered. Then generally, how do you investigate race or religious discrimination? And then there's a whole explanation of how they assess such things. What's the timeline for the investigation? They say we'll do everything in our power to do it as quickly as possible, but how long's a piece of string? What happens when there are parallel police investigations? Again, this is the closest thing that comes back to a question that I feel is missed out. It says, if there are parallel police investigations into offences by members of the public, we'll liaise with the police and CPS to determine the best course of action. The starting point to these discussions is to find the best way to progress all the investigations without compromising each other's inquiries. Not stepping on each other's toes. To ensure all relevant information is available to all parties, risks can be managed. This sometimes can be changing the way that evidence is gathered or sharing. Sometimes where the CPS considers activity may compromise the course of justice, an investigation may be required to delay some activity until the risk of prejudice passes, etc. So they work together and they work around it to try not to jeopardize each other's investigations, whilst cooperating where necessary, I suppose. But either way, doing it in the best interests of justice. The question that I respectfully suggest has been missed out here is, why are you not looking at the individuals in the video that may have committed any offences? And I use the terms very neutrally because these are live proceedings. So don't shoot the messenger. This is me avoiding any liability for saying anything wrong. Anyone who may have been accused of doing anything wrong in the video, who's not a police officer, is not going to be investigated by the IOPC. But I feel that should have been a question on this list, because I think a lot of people might have, let me know in the comments, have you had that question? Has that crossed your mind? Why is the IOPC not looking at the individuals in the footage? Because that's not their job, is the answer to the question. I'll answer it for them. That isn't what they do. They have sort of answered the question in a roundabout way, but not directly. They haven't spelt out the question like they have other questions here. The closest they come to is what happens when there are parallel investigations. And it just says if there are parallel investigations into offences by members of the public. Well, I understand that there are, but that's as far as I can go on saying that. But I do feel that would have been a question that would have helped a lot of people. Let me know in the comments if you've had that question, if that answers your question, and I understand that's right. I don't think, from my understanding, I'll be happy to be corrected if I am wrong, but I don't think I am. I don't think the IOPC directly investigates any members of the public. I think that is the job for the police. I think that is what they do. And that's what I understand they are doing, because they say that they've collated a file and passed it to the CPS, according to the last update from Greater Manchester Police. Indeed, going back to their latest update, which was on the 15th of August, it says, we've submitted a comprehensive file of evidence to the CPS for advice as part of an investigation into the series of alleged criminal offences which saw 3 officers injured at Manchester Airport. The major incident team investigators, led by highly experienced senior investigating officer, have been thoroughly investigating the incident. 4 men remain on bail. A separate independent investigation, the IOPC one, into the officers is ongoing. So that was the separate one, which I feel would have been addressed, or should have been addressed, in that fact sheet and question statement. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hopefully that's been of some use to you. Answered some questions about the IOPC involvement or lack thereof in regard to the individuals. But overall, we won't find anything else out until we have an update from either the police, the CPS, and or the IOPC. I know everyone is waiting for that, but just my usual warning of avoid speculation, avoid giving your opinions, avoid saying anything online that might scupper these investigations and the course of justice, because you yourself, if recent weeks are any indication, you might be pulled up for what you say on social media. So here we are. These are the times we're in. So leave your comments within reason and be careful about what you say. But with that, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.